Welcome to From Stuck to Scaled, Growth Strategies for Small and Mid-Sized Businesses, your guide to navigating growth, transformation, and success in today's ever-changing business landscape. Each week, we'll dive into proven strategies, real-world case studies, and actionable insights designed to help small and mid-sized business owners scale smart, lead stronger, and grow faster. Let's get you unstuck and on the path to sustainable, scalable success. Now your host, Julio Gonzalez.
So welcome back to From Stuck to Scaled, Growth Strategies for Small and Mid-Sized Businesses. I'm your host, Julio Gonzalez, and every week we explore practical strategies, leadership insights, and real-world tools to help small and mid-sized businesses break through barriers and grow with confidence. Today we're talking about leadership in sports, not just coaching, but the business of sports and how that extends into business beyond sports. Let's get started. From the gridiron at Howard University to the sidelines as a dedicated high school football coach, Brandon Graham has spent over 20 years creating and producing sports on screen. Brandon has taken his passion for sports and inspiring the next generation of athletes and is now using it to create engaging sports television at BECON-TV. I met Brandon just a few weeks ago. He casually mentioned being involved in a few projects, and I reached out to explore ways that we could collaborate. What I discovered was so much more: a joyful spirit, a genuine love for what he does, and a magnetic personality that lights up every room that he walks into. Let's welcome Brandon to the show. Brandon, I am super excited to have you here to continue our conversation. Tell our listeners who you are and a little bit about what you're doing here at BECON-TV.
Well, first of all, thank you for the kind words. And I think everything you said is so, honest. Is meeting you was great. And I think that's been such a good part of my life is meeting people. And it's helped me evolve. And I'm a guy who was very fortunate in that I grew up with a mother who was a principal and a dad who was a developer of complexes and houses and housing complexes and things. And I just learned a lot starting with them. And I took a lot of that to be able to be what I think was pretty good in school, and then I played football at Howard, like you said, and now I've taken a lot of experiences to where I'm able to just bring that to where I am now, which is a football coach. I'm an executive producer here at BECON-TV, which I'm very, very fortunate to do, and a lot of other things. So I'm a guy who just is trying to do the best I can at taking a lot of great experiences and a lot of great exposure to people and put it back out so other people can benefit from that.
That's awesome. And like I mentioned in the intro and in the title to the podcast, I wanted to talk about leadership on and off the field.
Absolutely.
Because obviously as a coach, you're a leader, but you're also a leader in the community. You're a leader here at BECON-TV. So tell me about that transition from coach to TV producer.
So, and that's a great question, because I think leadership is the first thing I kind of had to learn. I was a young coach starting, and I had a lot of things that I wanted to do, and you want to get in X's and O's, and you want to do all the fun stuff, and I had to learn that there's everything you do is some form of leadership, and everything I'm saying or not saying, body language was so important, and I had to really learn that. And then coaching coaches, teaching what you wanted, and that helped me kind of carry over, because I wasn't always an executive producer here at Beacon. I started in production, which was great, under some great people, and I learned from some great people, and I kind of put out there that I'd like to start a sports department. And my boss at the time said, "You want to do more work?" I've never had someone come to my office and say they want more. I'm like, of course, but and then I started one show, and then it grew to a second show, and at the time I was still balancing. She said, "I can't pay you just for that, you got to do your other job." I'm like, I just love what I'm doing. So then eventually I was very fortunate to kind of work into just the sports side, but leadership honestly was all of it. It ties in everything, and I had to really learn, and I'm fortunate that now I take my mom's leadership, that she was a principal my entire life, and so much of what I say I remember her saying, and sometimes I don't think of it, and my dad as well. My favorite coach, Renee Thompson, all of these guys just really inspired me, and females and males, inspired me in a leadership side of things. And now I've learned that educating is such a big part of leadership, and the people who you work with, and I don't like to always say work for you, but that you collaborate with, you have to educate as far as what you want and how you want things to go within your projects or your job, or whether it's coaching or whether it's here at Beacon.
And you touched on people working for you. From a pure management structure, yes,
Sure.
people end up working for you, but a true leader considers themselves part of that team, and the team does see you,
Yes.
as that leader. So it's hard when you're a servant leader, and I see that in you.
Yes.
It's hard when you're a servant leader to say my staff. Like I said, technically they are, but they are, the people with whom you collaborate
Yes.
to get things done. And one of the signs that I've always seen in a great leader is that people want to work for them, or maybe not necessarily work for them at a job, but
Sure.
Collaborate with them in projects. Tell me about some situations like that for yourself.
Everything with me has been learning, and I think I, like anyone else, has made mistakes, and I've learned how to be a better leader just through doing. And I think I've had some great people who've worked with me. Lewis Lamb, who was a coach with me, and David Wetzel, who were coaches with me that start at the very beginning. And they were people who, if I said, hey, we're going to coach you on the moon, they'd say, what time do we leave? And it was always, and I tried to make sure I always told them it was my pleasure to work with them, because those are the type of people who they're just so rare. And I think, just to have them, and they were people who I didn't have to say things, they got it. And I think that's where I started to develop my way of leadership. And it took a while. And I think the best thing I learned so much from coaching and playing a game of football, but the best thing I learned was try to define everything. When you're working with high schoolers, you have to define everything. I can say we're gonna have a great practice today, but what does great practice mean?
Right.
I can be a ninth grader who thinks just because I showed up, it was a great practice, and that's not what I want. I can't get mad at the 15-year-old because I didn't define what I want. And I think that's where I'm so lucky that I just have learned. And I think, the first thing I learned was you have to encourage, and I try to encourage people to want to be a part of what I'm doing. Like we were saying, it's just, I try to keep away from you're going to work my vision. I want to encourage you to work with our vision. And I think something we're going to do and something we're going to accomplish, and I think it's education is a big part of that, and all the three things I'm going to talk about, because I think you have to educate them as far as what your vision is. You have to tell them what it is, or now they're just going around trying to figure it out, and that's where the problems come in. And then the next thing for me is empower. I try to empower people to want to do things. If you're waiting for me to tell you every single step, again, now it's mine again.
Right.
It becomes my vision, my plan, and people tend to lose interest when they're just doing what you want them to do. So again, it's encourage and empower, and then, and then just engage is the last one. I've had to learn that one as well. Sometimes I get so wrapped up in what I'm doing, I forget to just how are things going? What are we doing? Where are you in this step? And just engaging. It doesn't always have to be about that. Sometimes it's talking about anything. But those are the three things I really had to learn in that order. And then I had to figure out, all right, where does education go in that? And education goes in all three. And I have to keep teaching at every step what I want. And I think that's where just that has been so big. And I mean, just like you said, there's been some fun ones. There's been times where I've learned as a coach, and I coached girls flag football as well in high school and tackle. And I had a young lady. I swore I was giving this great coaching point, and I was like, all right, you're going to go. It's going to be man defense. I need you to lock her up. Wherever she goes, that's where you go. And I went through this whole long explanation, and as soon as the girl went in motion, she just ran across the line of scrimmage and chased her all the way across the field. And I'm like, that's on me. I messed that one up. I got to do better. And that's one of those stories that I laugh about, because I get to remember that I messed the same young lady I said, all right, guys, young lady, we're going to practice. 4th and 10 situations, we got to work on it. We haven't been very good at it. She ran it and she raised her hand. Coach, you know how you say the and 10 part? What does that mean? And that was the end of the season. So I was like, all right, so clearly I got some things I got to fix. So it's just a lot of those things I've learned that, it's on you as kind of the one who maybe started with that vision to make sure that everyone is working together and kind of working towards what you want to accomplish.
As I'm listening to you, something popped into my head. The Panthers are in the finals, and the head coach was on one of the news stations the other day, and his message for one of the reasons that they're being so successful is that they're operating as a family.
Yep.
And everyone's caring for everyone else. I've been in many situations where we are antagonistic, against one another, theoretically on the same team, and it's impossible to succeed, when somebody's trying to be, that shiny star.
Sure.
Have you had any situations where you've had to, redirect players, to understand that we are a team, and yes, you will have your opportunity to shine, but we all have to shine together?
Constantly, and that's where I think one of the things I use as a lesson is it's very easy to be a team player when you're playing. And, I teach high schoolers that all the time. It's let's go team, and we've got to do this when you're on the field. Can you have that same energy if I got to take you out and you're a sub now? Because that's usually where the team goes out the window. Now all of a sudden I'm not as supportive, and now I'm not cheering for team because it became, it's me now. And some of that is but did you give that same energy that you had when you were on the field, when you wanted everybody to support? And I think that when you can hit again those specific examples, that's where I've been able to have some success, because it's so important to really hit, like you just said, that family side of things. And I was very fortunate when I coached, over at Hollywood Hills, from Dr. Kevin Perry was my athletic director, our first Sergeant Valdez before that, Mr. Most, the principal there. There's so many good people that I consider to be a part of that family, not just the players in the locker room and not just the assistant coaches, but there especially, it was easy for me because a lot of them embraced what we were trying to do. But it's always a struggle. It's always going to, and I get it. I used to get upset with it sometimes. I go home and how do people not get it? But everybody wants to accomplish certain things, and sometimes you have to understand. I had to sit back, and my one-on-one conversations are great about that, just to understand where a person's coming from and tell me why you did what you did, or explain to me where your head is. What are your goals? Sometimes understanding what their goals are help you understand why there's a disconnect with why they can't connect with family, because they need to help. You need to help them understand, well, what you want to accomplish can go with what we want to accomplish. If you work with the team, you can get to that. So that's where I love listening to any coach, any person in business, any person who has that mindset. And I think speaking to you has been great for me, because so many people, I like to say, are gatekeepers of information, and they just want to hold on to what they have and they don't want to share it, especially if it doesn't benefit them in some way. Right. And I think that's why I've enjoyed having conversations with you, and I appreciate you just taking time to just educate me on things. Our boss here, Jose, is great about that. He's very knowledgeable, but I can go into his office and I can see, you can tell when a person's listening and actually engaged. And I thanked him the other day for just being open to a different point of view and letting me maybe change his mind on something, and not saying this is how it's going to be. So yeah, it's team and family are different things sometimes. And I think that, I think Eric Spoelstra is great at that also. And I think the Panthers obviously are showing they're doing a great job of it. But that's one of my best examples of just team being, are you going to be a team player when you're on a sideline too?
So I've heard you mention a couple of times, your mom's influence as an educator. Who were some instrumental coaches or other educators in your life that have helped you, develop your leadership skills?
Renee Thompson was kind of the first coach I had that I took a lot from. He was a substitute when I was in high school as a junior, and kind of saw him from the back of the room. I was like, it looks like a Super Bowl ring. And he won the Super Bowl with the Giants and played with Parcells. He was all pro, special teamer. And everything about him is energy, and he's just an infectious personality. And I never, ever, he always exudes excitement about anything he does, whether it was teaching, practice, when we were watching film. And I think that was the first time I really understood that mentality. And he was the first, as I started coaching, I'd say something like, geez, I know where that came from. He just, and I'd pepper him with questions, and what was Bill Parcells like, and what'd you do? So he was the first person that really, from a coaching standpoint, and then Al Lang was another guy who really the guy has morals like I've never seen in my life. And I'm very blessed to have coached with him, because I learned then that there's no gray area about doing things the right way. If you want to be a coach, and sometimes, especially now, sadly, coaching and athletics has gotten to that point.
Yeah.
I was so blessed to have really learned from him in the beginning that if you're going to do it the right way, do it the right way. It doesn't matter what this guy's doing, doesn't matter what the result is. It's this is the right way to do things. And so those two from a coaching standpoint, and like I said, my mom was huge for me and still is. My dad as well. He just different personalities on the two of them.
Sure.
But those two just were huge. And I think I try hard to take something from every interaction I have with people. Doesn't always work, but I do my best. And sometimes it's, all right, well, I don't want to do that. So I always try to get something, but I think from a coaching standpoint, it was them. I had some great college playing experiences, but I think even now I still am learning. And Kevin Perry is another go-getter. He's phenomenal in my life, he matches my energy, so I feel comfortable being excited around him, and just there's a lot of really good people that I've been around, I guess I can say. I've interviewed some great people as well. I will say that, the Michael Irvins and the Patrick Petersons. We've touched on a lot of great people here at Beacon, and I think I go back a long way with this. And Patrick Peterson, who's close to retirement now, was still in high school. I interviewed him, and we did a lot of work with him. Devin Bush. There's a lot of guys who I've been very fortunate, and I'm not, this isn't a name drop type of show right now, but just so many people that I've talked to that I've interviewed them, but I'm just, wow. Shaq was one of those people as well. Just you learn because of how they speak.
Absolutely.
That presence, and Jerry Bruckheimer, kind of was the last one who walked into a room and just, it's different. When somebody like that sits down, remembers your name and engages and remember things you talked about, it tells you how you should kind of be as a person.
Yep, absolutely. So Brandon, before we pivot a little bit more towards the Beacon sports side of things, what are your students, your players going to say about you when they're adults, when they're, maybe sitting even in this chair?
Wow, that's a good one. And I think now that I've been coaching my entire adult life, and I finally am at the end now where I'm taking a next step approach with it. And I've more than ever stepped back and kind of spoken to, because when you're on that train, you're just going. You don't always appreciate the gravity of, what you have as a coach and that you're influencing so many young lives. And I just last night had one that sent me a picture and said, "I miss you, coach," and she's doing phenomenal things at LSU. One of the best people I've ever been around and had the experience of speaking to. And Val, still to this day, I still learn from her, and I still get exposed to, I'm still just happy because, as I told her recently, I know I did something right, because she's just a good person. I think, to answer your question, I think hopefully more of them would say, he gave us boundaries, but we understood, and he loved us. And I think I will say this, when I got the head coaching job, I'd always said that I had something I wanted to do first. And I walked into a room and said, "Guys, I love you." And I told them, I think that's one of the things that gets lost. And I think it was important for me to let them know everything that comes after this comes because of that. And I think I want you to know that and so many of them just were shocked, because you expect the fire and brimstone and the anger and the throwing things, but I want them, and hopefully they know I said it every day, and they know I said it every day. I said at the end of practice, I tried to make sure I said it when I was upset. If I had a practice that it just frustrated me, I had to yell, "Guys, I love you." And then we started, and I think hopefully it comes from, and so many of them, sadly, they don't hear it enough.
Yeah.
Some of them don't hear it at all, and I think I'm so blessed that I did hear it, and I try to remember that it's important to let other people, and and I always let the seniors their last practice speak in front of a group, and inevitably one or two would always cry. It was always just that moment, and we usually we blocked everybody else out, but I had one that just said, "I'd never heard another man tell me he loved me," and this was the first time on this team he started crying, and it hit me and hit all of us. So I think that's one thing, and hopefully, they learn football, and we got some in college and all those great things, and I can sit here and tell you the things I'm happy about. Yeah, coach helped me get in school, but hopefully they just, in everything he did, he loved me. And he came from a place of trying to see how he can make me better as a person, whether it's a young lady, young man, how I can be a better father, brother, son, daughter, whatever it is. And, understand that it's important to kind of have those priorities in life, which coaching wise was, for us, it was faith first, whatever you believe in. Family was 2, education was 3, football was always 4, and everything else was 5. And, those were the things that hopefully they always remembered. And, all those, everything else is, let's put them in the back burner, but keep those priorities that way. So
It's, it's great that you can see their successes, because as leaders, we often don't get to see, the fruits of our labor. I can look back throughout my career and see, certain individuals who I've been able to help and, how they've flourished. But you tend to see that in hindsight. You don't tend to get that immediate gratification, even with kids, with our own children, you get to see that learning that you've instilled in them much later. And you said something earlier, I don't know if it was about your mom, but you hear that voice. It was about one of your coaches. You hear that voice, coming out. That's the leadership part that stays with you. So obviously, your former players are keeping that, or the young lady at LSU wouldn't stay in contact and, share her successes with you. So it's great when you can see that, because we don't get that too often. Let's talk a little bit about Beacon Sports. What are you doing here at Beacon Sports? What are your top projects right now?
Well, actually, that's right now we're doing a lot here at Beacon, and I'd be remiss if I didn't start by saying, between Jose, the head of Beacon, and Alex, who's in charge of production, I appreciate them because they're so open to things, and I've been in places where we had a certain directive, and this place is unique in that if it benefits Broward students, they're all for it. And I think, that's why, again, going back to Jose, just being so open to, we have great dialogue, because I'll say something and say, I don't get that. And he's not a yes man, we have great talks because it lets me see different things. But one of the things we're doing right now, I just started, is called Forks in Sports. Excited about it because it's different. I've been so sports oriented my whole life that, and anyone who knows me knows I'm an eater. I love that part of things. I've probably a little too much, but I wanted to combine them a bit. So we just shot our first episode. We're finishing up. We're taking athletes. We're taking the best places to eat in Broward. We're combining those things. And I should say, South Florida, I should say, because there's a synergy there, I think, and there's so many places I'll go into. I'm like, wow, this is different. So, and I think so many of them also support schools and students. And I think that's important to show the ones who are really giving back, especially to Broward County Public Schools. And I think that's where that synergy should be, and that's what we're working on with that one.
And I'm glad you mentioned Broward County Public Schools, because we've talked around Beacon a little bit. What is Beacon?
There it is. I should have said that earlier. Yes, Beacon it stands for the Broward Education Communications Network. It used to be ITV a long time ago, and it's a station that's owned by the School Board of Broward County. And we're rare in that sense. There's only, I can't remember what the number is, maybe 6 of them in the country. And the Broward County Public Schools owns this station. We're in the schools, but we're also cable satellite all through south to Dade County, through north of Palm Beach and all that good stuff. So we do educational programming, we do everything is here. And I think this place is a diamond in the rough. I said it 100 times. I just love this place. And Beacon is owned by Broward County Public Schools. So many good people work here and for Broward County Schools.
And as executive producer for BECON-TV Sports, what all does your job look like?
So that's kind of what's good, is executive producer at a bigger station might be more hands-off in a lot of senses. And, you're the go-between between talent and production and those type of things. I love that I've kind of forced myself here to be really hands-on. I can go for anywhere from writing a script to shooting to on-air talent. That's what I always wanted to be, with on-air talent. I kind of step back a little bit. I still do it, but I enjoy other people. But yeah, that's the fun part about being here is I like working with students, and I have interns. I have, my associate producer, Lauren Potts, who has volunteered and worked with me for so long that I don't remember life at Beacon without working with Lauren. But she's another one of those light coaching who I sit back and I go, I am so blessed to have, come across a person who not only shares the vision I have for this place, but teaches it to people. And I still have students who've gone on to college and now work in television production or work in TV jobs that remember her. And that I love that part, and I remember that time, Lauren, and we have shoots and everything. And so my job here is really to take kind of an idea, figure out a way to get it out. And I think I had this great conversation with Jose the other day. I pitched something, he was like, is that something that we should be covering? And I'm like, yes, and I'm gonna tell you why. And I love that. I love that I have to explain it, and I had to say, that's why we should be, I should be. And he wasn't telling me not to do it, but it was just, my mom gave me that ability I'm not afraid to explain a vision or talk to a person in authority. And I love that about Beacon and that I've done that story. We're doing the Broward National Showcase with BEF, which bringing the top teams from around the high school football teams around the country are playing games here. And that's huge. I mean, we have the #1 team in the country who's coming here to play a game. We have our Broward County Public Schools are playing some teams from Utah and Jacksonville and Atlanta. Just that in and of itself, I think, is great. And I told Jose this the other day, taking from my coaching world, we have students, sadly, who some of them never been out of Broward.
Right. And
I hate to say it, but it's true. And if I can expose them to that and say, hey, that I had the chance to go to California, this, that, really? I mean, that's a whole other story. I had so much fun on that first year invite we just did as connected to the showcase. But I found myself getting that same excitement again about Beacon that I had when I started coaching, because it's great, and everything we do, and I get to work with students who are excited about their futures.
And kind of bringing this back to Forks and Sports,
Mm-hmm.
that is your brainchild that you are producing through Beacon Sports.
Correct.
So you've got the freedom,
yes,
to bring your own projects, besides the official station projects, which is fantastic.
Yep.
Talk to me now about that bridge between the leadership, as a coach, to your job at Beacon and the leadership that you're bringing to the station.
Leadership, I think, again, it doesn't really stop. I think the side I had for coaching, it was obviously directed in the sense of we're trying to win a game on a Friday night. But when it comes to this side of things, and I have interns, and we've been very fortunate. I don't do it as much now because we kind of shifted, but I was producing a game a week. We were going out to a different high school, and we were getting a game out where I had interns who were on all 4 cameras, instant replay graphics. I had color commentators, play-by-play. We were doing everything, and that took a lot because a lot of them never touched a camera and just didn't have that skill set.
Sure.
So, you're balancing you have a balancing act of I want to get this on the air because that's what I've promised, but I'm teaching, and I think one of the young men who did it a long time ago says he always remembers, it's not brain surgery, guys. If we make a mistake, fortunately, no one's going to pass away. You're allowed to make a mistake. Let me teach it. Let's fix it. Let's move on. So that was one of those things that I instantly knew I got from coaching. Just being able to take a group, point them towards a vision, and let's go. And I have a long time to teach you about what I'm going to do my best to kind of outline some things. And I'm going to trust you to kind of figure it out. And I think that's where I love coaching. And it's been so good for me that I was able to take that mindset and bring it to this place. And also working with people. Just like any other place, Beacon's different personalities and different skill sets. And when we did the showcase for the first time last year, so many good people. Our engineering department, our production department, graphics department, all came together in engineering, all came together to kind of put that game on, or 2 games we did. This year we went 2 games last year, now we're doing 4. And you have to be able to communicate with that kind of a room and just being able to say, and yeah, there are headaches like anything else, but everybody wanted a similar vision. And to be able to sit down and say, all right, how am I going to get through this guy who thinks this way and this guy who thinks this way and this person who's never really watched the game before. And it was a challenge. And I got that from football. Taking on that challenge and Hollywood Hills where I coached was great, but we didn't always start a season with 5-star talent. And that's, to be honest with you, I like that more. I wanted to be at a place where I could see the fruits of the labor, and you had to roll up your sleeves and really get in there. And I think that's benefited my work here because I feel like I can work within so many different places.
Right. No, I've never been in a newsroom, so I don't know what that is like. But I love what you guys are doing here because you don't have the pressures of needing to generate money and syndication and all that kind of stuff. So I see the joy that you've got in being able to produce onto a smaller audience, but with a lot more creativity and control. And I was very impressed with everything that I've seen and learned from BECON-TV. So it's exciting that you're excited to be here and be able to do the things that you do. So what's next for Brandon?
It's a great question. And you and I had this conversation recently. I am just recently off of the coaching kind of every second of my life carousel, and I'm learning myself again. When you coach your entire life, it's not exaggeration. I started coaching before college, and I've done it every year. This person is going to be different, than the guy last year, the year before. So I am really enjoying every single day, just going, wow, I like this, and I want to try that. But I will say this: one of the things that's next is really trying to find more ways to highlight Broward County's public school talent. I think I was around it for so long, and I was able to impact it as a coach in one school. And while I was doing that, I was obviously here and I was doing a lot. There are just so many good people in this school system. And I think it starts with the school board members and the superintendent. And I can't forget Broward Education Foundation with James Knapp and Sean Sayre, some of those people, Sean Sayre as well. There are so many good people that I want to find ways to highlight, and things and students and athletes. And I think that's my next plan is I want to find as many ways as possible to reach people in different ways. I don't want to be doing the same thing next year that I'm doing right now. I want to find a different way, and that's Forks in Sports, and that's the showcase, and that's where we were just going around the country inviting people to South Florida. And I want to find as many ways as I can to tell this great thing that we have called Broward County Schools and Athletics.
Brandon, no one leaves the show without providing a few tips to our listeners that they can act on today to improve their leadership, their business. What recommendations do you have for our listeners?
I think one, and it's a big one that I'm learning now, is self-care is important. And I think that's one of those things where you can help so many people if you kind of are feeling good about where you are and you're balanced. And I've done a better job at just learning when to say, all right, I need to balance and I need to take a second. And I think you can help so many people if you feel good about things. And I think that's where, whether it's a vacation, whether it's, again, knowing that the work is going to be there tomorrow. And I learned that from my previous boss here, Eric Powell, just the work, that computer's going to be here tomorrow.
Yep. Take
a second, go home, and sometimes the ideas come and they're even better. So just knowing when to walk away and when to just feel good about yourself. You can still, and you and I talked about sometimes going on, you and I are similar on vacations and having a schedule sometimes. That's my life, and that's okay. It's just you're in a different place, in a different environment, and that's the different part.
Change of scenery.
Change of scenery, yes. Thank you.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with the organization. Ricky,
exactly.
There's nothing wrong with the organization.
Ricky, there's nothing wrong with it.
Thank you. But it's the change of scenery that gives you the opportunity to refresh, your thought process.
You made me feel better about that, I will say, because I questioned my list sometimes on my trips, so I feel better.
It's come up a lot lately, so What other recommendations do you think you can share?
Well, I hit on the the 3 E's I used earlier. I think those are just, they've helped me, and I've had to learn them, and just really trying to use those in its business, but I also use it in coaching, and when I was talking to assistant coaches and players and everything, really using that because it helps you. And I think I got helped more because I was educating someone else, so it forced me to think about it. I'm telling this person this, I'm like, if I've been talking for 20 minutes, do I have an idea of what I want to actually do? Am I specific? Am I clear on the plan and the vision, the ideas? So really, having an idea of what you want to do, and when you start talking to someone, really encouraging them to start, and all those 3 E's I talk about, but every single on the 3 E's educating. And I think the educating of others helps you. And I think that's educate, empower, and engage, like I was saying, but really just having an idea of a definition of what it is you want to accomplish, educating people and making them a part of your vision and not people who are working for your vision.
Absolutely. Where can our listeners find you?
So Coach B Graham is Instagram for me, and I've started putting more there. We're Beacon, www.BECON.TV is where Beacon is, and where we're going to be, where we house a lot of fun stuff. And Beacon Sports is also our Instagram as well. So Coach B Graham and Beacon Sports are the places where we are on Instagram, and then Beacon.TV is where we are on the internet.
And that's Beacon, BECON, for those of you listening, but I'll put some links in the show comments so that you can get a hold of Brandon and find Beacon Sports. Brandon, thank you so much. I told you this was going to be a great conversation. I've loved it. I think our listeners are going to greatly enjoy today's episode, and I will be your guest soon.
Yes, sir.
On your podcast, because that's coming soon.
I'm holding you to it.
Absolutely, you can definitely count on me. And that's our show. So thanks for tuning in to From Stuck to Scaled. Again, thank you, Brandon Graham. Grateful for you having come on the show, and know that you just made a difference in someone's life.
Thank you.
Scaling smart starts with taking action, but don't leave out purpose and soul. What's your why? What's your purpose? Staying true to your purpose can be as powerful and as strong as a strategic plan. See you next time.
You've been listening to From Stuck to Scaled, growth strategies for small and mid-sized businesses, produced by Optocution LLC. For more information, tools, and resources, check out our website www.redefinepossible.co/podcast.